St. Peter's Square, May 13th, 1981. 5:19 in the afternoon. The sun is low. The white jeep moves slowly through the crowd. The Pope stands. He smiles. He lifts a small child into his arms, kisses the forehead, hands the child back to its mother. The wheels turn again, the crowd shifts. And in that shift, in that exact second, the child is lowered. The head of the Pope tilts down. Just slightly, just enough. The first bullet leaves the gun. It passes through the air where one heartbeat earlier his heart had been. It tears through his abdomen instead. The second bullet strikes his hand. A third grazes his arm. A fourth wounds a pilgrim behind him. The Pope slumps. The white cassock blooms red. The jeep races forward. Sirens. Screams. The crowd, frozen, watches the Vicar of Christ collapse into the arms of his secretary. He does not die. He should have died. The surgeons would say so later. The doctors at Gemelli Hospital would whisper it to each other in the corridors. The bullet's path made no sense. It had entered low, traveled through organs it should have destroyed, and exited without touching the central artery. By every measurement of ballistics, of anatomy, of physics, the man on that operating table should have been dead before the ambulance reached the hospital gates. He was not. And when he woke, weak, pale, barely able to speak, the first words from his lips were not about the gunman, not about the pain, not about the wound. The first words were a question asked of his attending priest in a hospital bed in Rome. "What is today's date?" The priest answered, "May 13th. The Pope closed his eyes, and he understood. Before we go any further, this story is going to ask something of you. Not money, not noise. Only that if what you hear in the next minute stirs something in your spirit, you let me know in the comments below and you stay close, because the chain we are about to trace did not end in 1981. It did not end in 2000. It is still moving. And the next link in it may already be wearing white. To understand what happened in that square, we must go back 64 years earlier to a country road outside a Portuguese village of 900 souls. 1917. The world is on fire. The Great War is grinding through its third year. Trenches in France swallow men by the hundreds of thousands. Russia is days from revolution. The Tsar will fall in October. The Church watches helpless as Europe consumes its own sons. And in a field called the Cova da Iria, outside the village of Fatima, 3 children are tending sheep. Lucia dos Santos, 10 years old. Her cousin Francisco Marto, 9. His sister Jacinta, 7. Poor children, illiterate children. Children who, by every social measurement of their century, were nothing. It is the 13th of May. A flash of light splits the sky. The children look up, and above a small holm oak tree, in a globe of light brighter than the sun, stands a woman. Young, dressed in white, brighter than crystal struck by sunlight, Lucia would later say. The lady speaks. She tells them not to be afraid. She tells them she has come from heaven, and she tells them to return to this place on the 13th day of each month for 6 months. They obey. She returns. June, July, August, September, October. Each apparition draws larger crowds. The civil authorities, hostile to the church, threaten the children, arrest them, separate them, interrogate them. The children do not recount. And on October 13th, 1917, before a crowd of 70,000 people in a soaking rain that had drenched the field for hours, the sun broke through the clouds, spun in the sky like a wheel of fire, descended toward the earth and then returned to its place. Atheists saw it. Reporters from secular newspapers saw it. Photographs were taken. The clothes of the witnesses, soaked through moments before, were dry. The lady had told the children on July 13th that this sign would come, so that all would believe. And in that July apparition, she had given them something else, a secret, in 3 parts. The first part, a vision of hell. The children, 3 peasant children, were shown the fate of souls who die without God. Lucia would describe it later, a sea of fire. Demons and souls like transparent embers, raised and lowered by flames that came from within them. Shrieks of despair. The children, having seen it, would never be the same. Jacinta, who was 7, began to fast and offer her sufferings for the conversion of sinners. She died 3 years later. Francisco died the year before her. The influenza pandemic took them both, as the lady had said it would. Only Lucia remained. Lucia, who lived to be 97 years old. Lucia, who became a Carmelite nun. Lucia, who carried the second and third parts of the secret in her heart for the rest of her life. The second part of the secret, named Russia, spoken in 1917, months before the Bolshevik Revolution had even occurred. The lady said that if Russia was not consecrated to her Immaculate Heart, Russia would spread its errors throughout the world, raising up wars, persecutions of the Church, the martyrdom of the good, the suffering of the Holy Father, and the annihilation of various nations. 1917. Before Lenin returned from exile, before the Tsar fell, before their word, communism was a power on the earth. The lady named it. The third part of the secret, Lucia wrote down only in 1944 under obedience to her bishop, who feared she might die without leaving it on paper. She sealed it in an envelope. She instructed that it be opened in 1960 or upon her death, whichever came first. 1960 came. Pope John the 23rd read the secret. He did not release it. He sealed it again and placed it in a Vatican archive. Paul VI read it. He did not release it. The world wondered. Rumors spread. Some said the secret described the apostasy of the Church. Some said it described the end of the world. Some said it described the death of a pope. For 40 more years, the third secret remained behind locked doors. Until a Polish pope, who had been shot in St. Peter's Square on the anniversary of the first apparition, decided that the time had come. Karol Wojtyla was born in 1920, 3 years after the Fatima apparitions. He was 9 months old, an infant in his mother's arms in southern Poland, when Lucia and her cousins watched the sun dance in the sky. He did not grow up praying to Our Lady of Fatima. The devotion was barely known in Poland. He was raised on the Black Madonna of Częstochowa, the dark icon of the Polish nation. Fatima belonged in his youth to others. But in 1947, as a young priest, he traveled to Italy. He met a Capuchin friar in a small mountain town. The friar was already famous for the wounds in his hands and feet that bled and would not heal. His name was Padre Pio, and the young Polish priest, Father Wojtyla, knelt for confession. When the confession was finished, the friar looked at him, and he said something. Witnesses present at that monastery would decades later report that Padre Pio had told the young priest he would one day rise to the highest office in the church, and that he would shed blood for that office. Father Wojtyla left the monastery quietly. He told almost no one. He went back to Poland. He served under the communists. He hid seminarians in his apartments. He smuggled the Eucharist into hospitals. He became a bishop, then a cardinal. Then, on October 16, 1978, The white smoke rose, and the world heard a name it could not pronounce. He took the name John Paul II, and on May the 13th, 1981, 3 years into his pontificate, a Turkish gunman named Mehmet Ali Agca, trained, some believe by handlers in the Eastern Bloc, fired 4 bullets into him in St. Peter's Square. On the anniversary of the day, a woman in white had first appeared to 3 peasant children in Portugal. When the Pope opened his eyes in the hospital and the priest told him the date, he understood. He had not been the master of that bullet's path. Another hand had moved, a mother's hand. He asked for the 3rd secret of Fatima to be brought to his bedside. It was carried to him in its sealed envelope. He read it as he recovered, he read it again, and he made a decision. He did not release it, not yet. The world, he believed, was not ready. The wounds of the Cold War were still open. Russia had not yet been consecrated. He had work to do first. A year after the shooting, on the 1st anniversary, he flew to Fatima. He walked into the chapel of the apparitions. He carried with him a small object, a bullet, one of the bullets that had been pulled from his body. He approached the statue of Our Lady, the same statue that had stood for decades in the place where the lady had appeared. The statue wore a golden crown. The Pope lifted the bullet. He placed it inside the crown of Our Lady of Fatima. It remains there today. You can see it. Pilgrims have photographed it for 44 years. A small dark object set among the gold. The bullet that should have killed him, placed in the crown of the woman he believed had saved him. He met with Sister Lucia that day, the only surviving witness of the original apparitions. They spoke privately. He would visit her again in 1991, on the 10th anniversary of the shooting, and again in 2000, on the 83rd anniversary of the first apparition. In 1984, in Rome, in union with all the bishops of the world, John Paul II consecrated the world and Russia by implication to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Sister Lucia, in subsequent letters, would say that the consecration had been accepted. Some still debate this, many do not. 5 years later, the Berlin Wall fell. 2 years after that, the Soviet Union dissolved without a single shot fired across its borders. The arrows of Russia, the lady had said, would spread throughout the world. And now, the source of those arrows had collapsed in on itself like a dying star. A Polish pope who had been shot on the anniversary of Fatima had outlived the empire that many believed had tried to kill him. And on June 26, 2000, John Paul II, then bent with Parkinson's, his voice trembling, did what no pope before him had done. He released the 3rd secret of Fatima. He had Cardinal Ratzinger, the future Pope Benedict, write the theological commentary. The text was published in full. The world read it. It described a vision, an angel with a flaming sword crying out for penance, a mountain steep topped with a great cross of rough timber, and climbing the mountain with great pain a bishop dressed in white, the Holy Father, climbing through a half-ruined city past the bodies of the dead until at the foot of the cross he was killed by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him. A bishop dressed in white, killed by bullets, climbing toward a cross. The Vatican interpretation, signed by Ratzinger and approved by John Paul II, was clear. The vision had been fulfilled. The bishop in white was John Paul himself. The bullets had been fired in 1981. The lady's hand had diverted the path. He had survived. The vision had shown what should have happened. Heaven had altered the course. the case in the official Vatican view was closed. But Sister Lucia lived 5 more years after that release. She died in 2005, 3 months before the Pope she had met 3 times. And many of the faithful, then and now, have wondered whether the Vatican interpretation told the whole story, whether the bishop in white might still refer to a Pope yet to come, whether the half-ruined city was not 1981 Rome, but a future Rome, whether bullets and arrows might be metaphors for trials still ahead. The lady, after all, had said the message of Fatima was for the end of times, not the end of the world, the end of an age, the end of a way of being. And so we come, after 108 years, to the present. May 8th, 2025. White smoke rises again from the Sistine Chapel. The crowd in St. Peter's Square holds its breath. The senior cardinal deacon steps forward. Habemus Papam. The name announced is Robert Francis Prevost. He is 69 years old, born in Chicago, the first American pope in the 2,000-year history of the Church, an Augustinian friar, the first pope ever drawn from the order founded on the rule of St. Augustine of Hippo, the great African doctor of the Latin Church who, 16 centuries earlier, had written that the human heart was restless until it rested in God. And the name he chose, the name he carried out onto the loggia of St. Peter's, was Leo, the 14th of that name. Leo the 13th, his predecessor by that title, had reigned at the end of the 19th century. And in October of 1884, according to multiple Vatican sources, Pope Leo XIII had experienced a vision after celebrating Mass. He had seen, some accounts say he heard, a dialogue between Christ and Satan. The adversary had been granted a span of years, perhaps a century, to test the Church. Shaken, the Pope returned to his study, composed a prayer to Saint Michael the Archangel, and ordered it recited at the end of every low Mass throughout the Catholic world. Defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. That prayer was prayed at every Mass for 80 years. It fell out of use after the Second Vatican Council. And then John Paul II in 1994 asked the faithful to begin praying it again. Leo XIII saw the vision. John Paul II carried Fatima, and the new Pope in 2025 has taken the name of Leo. His middle name is Francis, the same name as the Pope who preceded him, the Pope who beatified Francisco and Jacinta of Fatima in 2000 and canonized them in 2017 on the 100th anniversary of the apparitions. His middle name is also the name of the male shepherd child of Fatima, Francisco, the boy who saw the lady, the boy who died at 11. Coincidence perhaps, the Church has always been careful about reading signs. 2,000 years of caution. We are not the ones who declare prophecies fulfilled. That work belongs to a more patient hand than ours. But these are the facts. A Polish pope, shot on the anniversary of an apparition, placed his bullet in a Marian crown. He met 3 times with the only surviving witness of that apparition. He released the 3rd secret of Fatima, which described a bishop in white climbing toward a cross. He died in 2005, having outlived the empire the lady had named in 1917. His successor was Benedict, then Francis. Then, on May 8, 2025, an American Augustinian named Robert Francis took the name Leo XIV, the 14th Leo, in the line of a pope whose vision had warned of a century of trial. What does it mean? Honest Catholic teaching gives us a careful answer. It means what we do not yet know. The Church does not bind the faithful to private revelation. Fatima is approved, but the meaning of its third secret has been declared by the official Vatican reading to have been fulfilled in 1981. That reading is the Church's. We owe it our respect. But we are also permitted to wonder, to watch, to pray, to notice the shape of a story as it unfolds across a century, across the lives of 3 popes, across the bones of 2 shepherd children buried in the basilica at Fatima, across the hand of a woman in blue who, by John Paul's own testimony, moved a bullet's path on a May afternoon in Rome. A new pope wears white now. He walks the corridors his Polish predecessor walked. He kneels at the same altars. He carries the name Leo, the name of the pope who saw the vision. He carries the middle name Francis, the name of the Fatima shepherd. He is the first Augustinian, the first American. And his pontificate, whatever it will be, begins 108 years after a Portuguese sky tore open above 3 illiterate children who had never read a book. We do not know what is ahead. The lady in her July apparition said that in the end, her Immaculate Heart would triumph. She did not name the day. She did not name the year. She did not name the Pope under whose reign the triumph would come. She only promised that it would. And so the faithful, the old men and women who have prayed the Rosary every evening for 60 and 70 years, the grandmothers who taught their grandchildren the prayer to Saint Michael, the soldiers of the unseen war, watch and wait. They remember the bullet in the crown. They remember the Polish Pope who placed it there. They remember the small flame, still burning, of a chain that runs from a field outside a Portuguese village in 1917, through the cobblestones of St. Peter's in 1981, to the loggia of that same basilica on a spring evening in 2025. A chain that perhaps no one noticed, and a chain perhaps that is not yet complete.